Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm expanding one of my previous videos where I looked at some of the niche and weird specs from vanilla and evaluated what made them strong and viable in the Burning Crusade. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Protection Paladin spec, talking about the main differences and additions to the spec compared to vanilla WoW, and then we'll be looking into the strengths and weaknesses of the spec in the Burning Crusade and just generally taking a deeper look into the playstyle. Just before we jump in guys, apparently 90% of the people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to my channel, so I would appreciate if people did quickly subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button because that really does help out. So let's count down what did the Paladin actually lack in vanilla that made it a largely unviable spec. First of all, there's no taunt ability. So how you even expected to get aggro in the first place is a mystery to me. Secondly, there's no way to pull mobs other than just running in with Holy Shield, so that can complicate things when you're trying to generate aggro in the early stages of pulling a trash pack. You have absolutely no defensive cooldowns. There's no passive damage mitigation, apart from the blocking abilities and stuff like that. They have serious mana issues, even with Seal of Wisdom and Judgment of Wisdom. And if you look closely at the talents like Rebout and Reckoning, they rely on you being dealt a critical hit. But here's the rag. If you increase your defense rating, you reduce the chance that you will actually receive a critical hit, so that you don't actually die when you're dealing with a boss. So that means you can't even benefit from a lot of your talents because you won't be getting a critical hit. So let's have a look at what Blizzard introduced in the Burning Crusade to fix a number of these issues and make Protection Paladin a very viable tanking spec. So first of all, they were actually given a taunt called Righteous Defense. How this worked was you applied it to a friendly party member, and 3 targets that are attacking that party member would be aggroed onto the Paladin. However, you could basically just cheese it with a macro that allowed it to automatically happen on your current target's target, so it just worked more like a normal taunt. So in a way it's actually a very useful AoE taunt ability. Secondly, they got Avenger Shield, which is a cleave ability that deals holy damage up to 3 targets, and it's actually a ranged ability. This meant that they could generate a lot of aggro nice and early at the beginning of a pull, and they're also very good at picking up adds on a boss fight, and to be honest, they're even better than Protection Warriors when it comes to pulling. Unfortunately, they didn't get any defensive cooldowns unless you want to count Lay of Hand, but that was also in vanilla, but they did get Ardent Defender, which reduced the amount of damage you took by 30% when you're less than 35% health, so this helped smooth out damage when you were in a critical moment. And the mana issues were fixed with a passive ability called Spiritual Attunement, which meant that 10% of healing that you receive was actually gained as mana. This fixed it, well, it largely improved the mana issue, but didn't totally fix it in all honesty. It meant that in order for you to not have a mana issue, you had to be a skilled player. It wasn't totally made redundant. So let's talk more about the strengths of a Protection Paladin and go into a little bit more depth explaining the playstyle of what they would actually do in a realistic Burning Crusade raiding environment. So Protection Paladins are the strongest supporting off-tank in the game. Well, what do I mean by that? What I mean is Protection Paladins are absolutely essential for when you're doing a raid that has 1, a lot of trash packs, and 2, boss mechanics with a lot of adds. This is because Protection Paladins have a much better AoE threat capabilities than a Protection Warrior, and they are just generally better at picking up aggro in the early phases of entering combat. You absolutely couldn't run a Karazhan run without Protection Paladin. You would have a very difficult time dealing with all the trash packs in Karazhan without a Protection Paladin, without their really strong AoE aggroing abilities. For instance, you had Consecration, which did holy damage on the floor. You have Retribution Aura, which is reactive damage, so whenever you take damage you deal damage back. Holy Shield had a largely similar effect. You had Blessing of Sanctuary, which basically did the same on your blocks like Holy Shield. And then you could also add Shield Spike, Oil of Immolation. You can also get the headpiece from Nomeron, which scaled with Spellpower to also increase your reactive damage. So there's a lot of different tools and abilities at your disposal to generate a lot of AoE aggro. Fair enough, the Protection Warrior is better as a main tank because of all their mitigation and all their cooldowns and stuff like that, but you definitely need a Protection Paladin as a supporting tank. This meant that Protection Paladins would actually need to stack Spellpower. They actually would equip a Spellpower weapon, much like a Mage or a Shadow Priest. And you'll notice that a lot of their tier sets actually do have Spellpower on them. Another great thing about bringing a Protection Paladin is that they can buff the party with Blessing of Salvation to reduce the threat that other DPS deal in the group. This meant that DPS could push their DPS further without risking pulling aggro off the tank. It's actually the reason why a Paladin is pretty much essential for any raid group, to be honest. If you're running a raid group without a Paladin, you're going to have a very difficult time. This meant that Protection Paladin was an extremely high demand for rep farming groups. There is a lot of rep farming in the Burning Crusade, and the main way that you actually do that is by doing dungeons over and over again. So obviously the faster you can get through those dungeons and the bigger pulls that you can do, the faster you're going to obviously get that rep. But the issue with that is if you start doing AoE DPS, for instance if you have a Protection Warrior as a tank, you're probably going to pull aggro from the tank. But if you have a Protection Paladin, 1, he's going to generate loads of aggro, and 2, he can put Blessing of Salvation on AoE DPS like Warlocks and Mages, so they'd never pull aggro off the Protection Paladin. So generally they were just really awesome at doing huge mob pack pulls, as you can see by the footage in the background. When it came to boss tanking, they were the go-to off tanks because they were so good at actually picking up aggro on boss adds. So for instance, if a boss spawns some kind of add that you have to deal with, Protection Paladin could preemptively use Avenger Shield with wings applied, which increases their damage by 20%, which obviously massively increases their aggro. Then they could very quickly pick up boss adds, and obviously that reduces the chance of the boss adds being pulled onto friendly targets like mages and DPS roles like that, which reduces the chances of them dying. And even if Avenger Shield fails, they can use Righteous Defense, which obviously worked as an AoE taunt, which is really good at protecting people. Protection Paladin were also really good at generally just supporting the main tank when they're not tanking, so they can use abilities like Blessing of Sacrifice to reduce the amount of damage that a Protection Warrior will take, or obviously a Feral Druid, and if you stack that with Sanctuary, you're reducing about 184 damage per damage hit on the main tank, so obviously that's a massive damage reduction. That's like about half of what a block would probably, the amount of damage a block would block, so it's almost like having half a block permanently on the main tank. And obviously they can also help out with heals. A lot of the time when I'm not tanking, because the other tank has pulled the aggro, I can simply just spam Flash of Light to help him out. They're also really good at aggro swapping, because sometimes Taunt would actually miss because it actually relies on spell hit in the Burning Crusade, which is really irritating because obviously tanks don't really want to mess about stacking spell hit, so sometimes Taunt just misses, which is really irritating. So if if say for instance the Warrior's Taunt misses and I still have the aggro and I'm getting some stacking debuff which is going to kill me, what I can do is just pop Divine Shield, and then I'll lose threat, and then I can cancel it straight after. And if my taunt misses, I can pop Blessing of Protection on the Warrior, so that he drops the aggro and the aggro goes on to me. So you've got like an extra fail-safe ability to do an aggro swap. And generally Protection Paladin just provides a lot of great support for the rest of the party as well, other than the main tank, with Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing Protection, Freedom, Lay of Hands, and obviously you can cleanse, you can actually do debuffing if you're not too busy. A lot of the time it is my job on the last boss of Karazhan to actually debuff the main tank. And obviously you can actually just cleanse yourself, so you don't even have to rely on a healer to wait for them to dispel, because normally, let's be honest, healers are always really late with dispels. You can just do it yourself. Obviously, unlike a warrior, you can provide really useful buffs for the rest of the raid with King, Salvation and all the main Paladin buffs. The last thing I can really mention is you have White Protection with Divine Intervention, which obviously saves a little time because you can pop that on anyone that can res, and then you don't have to run all the way back through a raid, because obviously Karazhan is a really long raid, so that can massively save time on your raid night. But obviously there are actually some weaknesses to the Protection Paladin, and it's largely why the Protection Warrior and the Feral Druid are considered to be better main tanks. First of all, they don't have the best mitigation, like when it comes to passive mitigation, apart from the Ardent Defender. Ardent Defender isn't too bad, but obviously you can only take advantage of it when you're really low in health, when a large hitting ability will probably kill you anyway, regardless whether you have Ardent Defender or not, so it isn't that useful. So Protection Paladins, they are simply just a little bit more squishy than the other tanks. Obviously they don't have any major defensive cooldowns. They have Lay of Hands, but that doesn't really count. Warriors have Shield Wall to preemptively anticipate big dealing damage. They also have Spell Reflect to totally negate magic damage, which is really useful because a lot of magic damage can really melt you as a Protection Paladin. So the only thing you can really do is use defensive trinkets and stuff like that, but a lot of the time you're just going to run into a lot of issues as a protection paladin, because big damage is going to come your way and you have no way to really counter it, whereas like a warrior can pop shield wall to totally smooth out that damage. You only have one range pull, and the disadvantage with your range pull is that it's a cleave ability, so this can complicate things. For instance, on the first boss of Gruul's Lair, you can obviously use Avenger shield, but you're going to daze all the mobs, which means it takes them longer for them to actually get to the raid, and that can complicate things. You can counteract this issue by using stuff like magic candles, which you can farm from the geomancers in Elwyn Forest, which basically gives you a free low ranking, low damaging fireball that you can use. You can also use Lincoln's boomerang to do pulls, which is a trinket from Overgrow Crater, and you can also use the axe from the last boss of Karazhan, because that's also a really useful range pull weapon. And another major disadvantage is the fact that they actually need spell power in the first place, because the spell power is absolutely essential. You need about 200 as a real minimum to build up threat in a raiding environment. But this means that when they're stacking spell power, they can become a little bit more squishy, because obviously warriors don't have to worry about that, which means they can stack stats like block value, more defense rating, more stamina, whereas we need to kind of compensate for that by equipping gear that has just spell power. And over tier pieces, they are like largely spell power gear. Again, this just means that protection paladin are a little bit more squishy than a protection warrior. But when you have a spell power weapon, obviously spell power weapons do half the damage of normal weapons, literally half. So if you've totally ran out of mana, which does happen from time to time, it can be very difficult to actually generate aggro because your weapon's doing so little damage. So it takes a while for you to obviously get your mana back before you can start generating aggro again. You can counteract that issue by enchanting a normal warrior tanking weapon with spell power and using a weapon oil, which is a good trick to use, by the way. But again, relying on mana for your threat and aggro is a little bit of an issue. But anyway guys, that's pretty much all I can talk about when it comes to the Protection Paladin. I've been playing Protection Paladin for a long time now on Endless WoW, and I did play a little bit of it on Warmane. It is definitely one of my favourite tanking specs, simply because you're so valued as an AoE, you know, dungeon farming tank. I just generally find it a little bit more interesting than playing a warrior. The main reason why I don't play a warrior is because of rage, and I find it irritating that you have to generate rage in order to generate aggro, but when you open fights you don't have a lot of rage, so that kind of skill ceiling for me, I know that kind of skill that you have to learn as protection warrior, I don't enjoy as much as playing protection paladin. I just generally like being more of a support class rather than a class that is a ultra specific specialist class, which is what a protection warrior is. It is like a specialist class at main tanking, whereas the warrior protection paladin is a little bit of mix of all trades. But anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is Goblin. To my next video, ciao.